Alberta's government has launched a major crackdown on unsafe commercial truck driving schools and is planning to elevate trucking to a certified national Red Seal trade. Meanwhile, Calgary's mayoral hopefuls traded blows over crime, city spending, and public safety in a fiery debate ahead of this month's election. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and B.C. Premier David Eby have gone back and forth countless times, as Smith is warning that if Canada won't cooperate with pipelines, the U.S. will. Classrooms remain empty after teachers walked off the job, but their demands remain completely unclear, as the ATA's press conference focused mostly on buzzwords. I'm your host, Isaac Lamoureux, and let's get into that first story right away. So Alberta has rolled out its toughest enforcement to date against unsafe commercial trucking schools and carriers, closing 5 driver training schools, issuing 39 disciplinary letters, and more than $100,000 in administrative penalties, while imposing 6 corrective action plans, revoking 12 instructor licenses, and sending 4 warning letters to driver examiners. 13 commercial trucking companies were removed from Alberta's roads for poor on-road performance, unsafe equipment, or failure to meet mandatory safety standards. 7 of these companies were chameleon characters, meaning they had been shut down elsewhere, but attempted to operate in Alberta under new names, entities, or locations. And Alberta Transportation Minister Devin Dreeshen said the trend of chameleon carriers is growing. He said, quote, "They are essentially the same company moving to Alberta, changing the name and hoping they can start up without anybody noticing. And the fact that our guys did notice and shut them down obviously shows that our enforcement is working." He added that it is a disturbing trend that you see these trucking companies trying to get away with, obviously papering over their bad actions that they've done for a myriad of reasons, of why they got their licenses revoked in another province, and then hoping just to uproot and set up shop in a different province. It's disturbing, but I'm glad we shut them down here in the province. Alberta previously rolled out an initiative to catch companies that were misclassifying drivers as independent contractors to avoid payroll taxes and benefits. In July, 20% of the drivers stopped were misclassified, including some temporary foreign workers. Dreeshen said the province is also driving toward a national Red Seal path for truck drivers, and 5 provinces need to sign off. But he said Alberta is almost there in getting 5 to support the program. Dreeshen said, quote, "I think that will go a long way of having additional training for certain aspects of the trucking industry, as well as a higher degree of professionalism for people to see trucking as a lifelong career and something that they'd be proud to get into." He said, in fact, that he was surprised this hadn't happened already. The province is also tightening training and tracking. Some rules implemented last year means that Alberta requires more training hours than any other province for a Class 1 license. And Dreeshen said, quote, "A trucker's life, a trucker's workplace is on the road behind the wheel of a vehicle. So to be able to have more in-truck hours of training obviously creates a better driver." But now with the newest change, driver experience records will follow the driver instead of remaining with the company. Dreeshen said, quote, "We have seen certain bad drivers have accidents, have instances where they are then moving from company to company and their bad driving record actually never follows them. And so the new company that's hiring them doesn't know the previous accident or previous issues that they've had. So that's something that we think will add more accountability into the industry so that a trucking company will easily be able to identify a bad truck driver that maybe needs more training or just plainly shouldn't be on our roads." And on labor, Dreeshen said that the province is short roughly 4,500 truckers and encouraged experienced Class 1 drivers who left the industry to return. He explained that trucking is integral to the country's economy, and despite being critical of bad actors, Dreeshen explained that the industry was not in disarray. He commended drivers in the industry, who he said do an amazing job, adding that it is a very challenging job that requires many to be away from their families. He said, quote, "There are amazing truck companies, amazing truck training schools across the province that are world leading. I don't want to give off the impression that the trucking industry is somehow doing bad, because I think they have a very good reputation of being the best drivers and the most trained drivers on our roads." Finally, he said, quote, "My hat goes off to the men and women in the industry because they do a great job. It is a tough profession, but someone's got to do it." But our next story will look into the recent Calgary municipal debate that took place on Wednesday. Calgary's top mayoral candidates faced off in a Wednesday night forum, clashing over public safety, city spending, and Alberta's political future, with some even taking aim at Premier Smith, separatism, and demanding stronger local leadership. Public safety dominated the start of the evening, with Councillor Sonia Sharp touting her plan to hire 500 new police officers and open a 24/7 downtown station, a proposal that has been endorsed by the Calgary Police Association. She said, quote, "If you don't have a safe city, you have nothing. People won't move here, people will leave here." Incumbent Mayor Jyoti Gondek defended her record, pointing to an integrated response model and the new bylaw banning open drug use. She said, quote, "We will not make open drug use something that is normalized. We are banning it," adding that offenders will be referred to community court to access supports. Former councillor Jeremy Farkas called to combine enforcement with compassion, noting that a core 50 to 200 people drive most of the repeat violent offenses. He said, quote, "We need to crack down on those individuals through sentencing and bail reforms." He later warned that separatist rhetoric creates uncertainty and pledged to keep partisan politics out of City Hall, saying he'd push back as a part of Team Canada. Former councillor Jeff Davison accused the current council of inaction. He asked the audience, quote, "Do you feel safer today than you felt 4 years ago?" He said that Calgarians have demanded safer transit, new police officers, and cleaner streets for 4 years. He again asked, quote, "How come it's only an election year that we suddenly have plans?" Lawyer Brian Thiessen, former chair of the Calgary Police Commission, proposed a housing-first model, citing Finland as an example. He also suggested 24/7 integrated mental health units to reduce strain on police. He said, quote, "You cannot police your way out of these issues," citing police organizations from his time with the commission. And the debate grew more political as candidates discussed Calgary's relationship with the provincial government. Thiessen even attacked Premier Danielle Smith. He said, quote, "Our autonomy is under attack from a premier who treats Calgary like her personal ATM," citing Smith's arena deal, Green Line revisions, and reduced photo radar revenues. Farkas warned against political polarization, pledging to keep partisan politics out of City Hall. He also opposed rhetoric around Alberta separatism, framing Calgary as a key part of Team Canada. He said, quote, "I hear from businesses every single day who talk about the lack of certainty from the regulatory environment in terms of a lot of the talk and the rhetoric around Alberta separatism. I'm seeking a mandate to very strongly push back against that, to lean in a leadership role as part of Team Canada." Immigration and population growth were also concerns tied to housing and workforce shortages. Farkas highlighted Calgary's diversity. He said that a third of Calgarians today weren't even born in North America, which he called a strength due to Calgarians' youth and education. And Thiessen argued that Calgary could attract skilled workers priced out of the U.S. market, suggesting that Canada accept immigrants on the H-1B visa, which the U.S. recently opposed. He even called for more support for newcomers. And the forum closed with contrasting appeals. Of course, Davison framed the election as a choice about trust and leadership. Sharp promised real change and stronger control of City Hall administration. Thiessen cast himself as an independent reformer who would fight for Calgary without partisan loyalty. Gondek urged voters to reject empty rhetoric, while Farkas, acknowledging his past mistakes, said he sought to serve with humility and keep political parties out of City Hall. Calgarians head to the polls on October 20th for the municipal election there, with advance voting already underway. But for our next story, we'll bring it back more provincially because BC Premier David Eby has repeatedly dismissed Alberta's proposed West Coast pipeline as fictional, political, and lacking a proponent, route, or private funding. He argued that it would cost taxpayers tens of billions of dollars, and he repeatedly called the pipeline non-existent despite his many attacks against it. And he's repeated that claim, that lie, that taxpayers will be burdened with the cost. Because from the start, Alberta has said it will commit only $14 million, which will essentially just cover early planning with Indigenous partners, and it 100% expects private industry to take over once the application is approved. The Alberta government has said it's only involved in the first place because policies like Bill C-48, the tanker ban, have destroyed past projects and scared off private investment. But the Alberta government and its energy officials have been upfront from the moment the project was announced, ensuring that taxpayers will not be on the hook for construction or ownership costs. And Alberta Premier Danielle Smith said that the pipeline needs federal cooperation and warned Ottawa that national unity is at stake. She told CTV, quote, "Albertans are questioning whether Canada works. I suppose I could just go down to the United States and start working with American counterparts to see if we can build more pipelines. They've expressed interest in restarting the Keystone XL, and I suppose we could maybe sell another 2 million barrels a day additional to the United States." And Smith has called Eby's approach un-Canadian and unconstitutional, arguing that courts have affirmed interprovincial infrastructure falls under federal jurisdiction. And while Eby has repeated rhetoric about Team Canada and anti-America, anti-Trump, his actions are working in contrast with his comments because Smith has explained that projects like this is how Canada would become less reliant on the US. So of course, if her counterparts failed to work with her, Smith said the US would be happy to. But she said that would be a failure. Smith said, quote, "The whole reason why we've had this recalibration in Canada in the last 8 months is because people are nervous that we are far too reliant on the United States. So changing that so that we become even more reliant on the United States seems to be a failure." She added, quote, that the Supreme Court has determined that the reason we have a country and have been given trade and commerce power and control over ports and interprovincial infrastructure to the federal government is for exactly this reason, so that a parochial premier isn't able to block nation-building projects. And Smith's partner on the other side of the province there, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe, took her side very, very strongly. He said, quote, "The Premier of Alberta is right. The NDP Premier of British Columbia is wrong." As for timelines, Smith expects this to be settled by the Grey Cup in November, along with two other things, which she is calling her grand bargain. Those other things being repealing the 9 bad laws and moving forward on the Pathways project. But for our next story, we're going to get to this teacher strike that is, of course, ongoing because Alberta classrooms remain empty after the Alberta Teachers Association launched what it calls the largest labor disruption in Alberta history, with 51,000 teachers on strike. But ATA President Jason Schilling held a Monday press conference where he did not provide any numbers or facts on what would end the strike, sticking to buzzwords like chronic underfunding, complex classrooms, and fair pay. He said, quote, "This strike is not just about wages, this strike is about the state of public education in Alberta." His remarks, of course, followed the teachers overwhelmingly rejecting 2 settlements from the provincial government after one was recommended by a mediator and another was negotiated and actually agreed upon by the Teachers Employers Bargaining Association and the Alberta Teachers Association. The deal, of course, included hiring 3,000 new teachers and 1,500 educational assistants over 3 years, plus a 12% salary increase, which was actually more so a 17% salary increase for more than 95% of the teachers. Premier Danielle Smith explained that by 2027, a top category teacher would earn $114,800 a year, but nearly 9 in 10 teachers voted against the deal. And despite weeks of negotiations, Schilling offered no details on the ATA's latest proposal to the province or what monetary figure could resolve the impasse. When asked about how long the strike might even last, Schilling really didn't say anything. He said exploratory talks between the ATA and the province would continue this week, but offered no clear timeline or terms. And the Alberta government has announced further support for families and students. This is from last Friday. But Schilling criticized the province's recently introduced family support programs, including $150 weekly payments to parents and a free education toolkit, arguing that the government should invest the funding into schools. He also claimed the toolkit contained American-based curriculum, but when he was asked to provide a single example, he was, of course, unable. Schilling also attacked the government's home education option, which provides up to $450 per student to parents who withdraw their children from public schools during the strike. He said, quote, "It makes me question the seriousness of this process and negotiations if we're willing to do what government has indicated there. Is this a way to further undermine and erode public education in the province?" But despite, and this is crazy, despite collecting millions in union dues, Schilling confirmed teachers would not be receiving strike pay. He said teachers were aware of this when they voted, but added that the ATA would be paying health benefits throughout the strike. An ex-post surfaced last Saturday showing the Alberta Teachers Association living quite lavishly at the Kananaskis Nordic Spa, which charges hundreds of dollars for massages, hydrotherapy, and more. But that wraps up this week's Alberta Roundup. My name's Isaac Lamoureux. Have a great weekend. Thank you, and God bless.